Hello Fun Army. So today we are zoning in on a different area of fun, a slightly quieter area of fun, and one that I guess some people traditionally wouldn't even see as being fun, but for me is totally like escaping into another world and having lots of adventures without even leaving my home. Can you see where I'm going with this? Today we are talking about books, and I actually, in the grand tradition of BookTube, wanted to do a bookshelf TBR with you today. You find a lot with book lovers, and I'm definitely no exception to this, that we tend to have more books than we have space for. And this is definitely me. And I actually, back when I worked directly in London town, I used to work so close to a Waterstones, so like particularly on rainy lunchtimes I'd just go in and I'd be looking at the books, and they'd have like, you know when they do like the buy one get one free, or the buy one get one half price, or you know, buy two get the third, like there's always some kind of offer on. So I ended up with a lot of books. And you may have heard me talk about this before, but yeah, I think probably like 3 or so years ago now, I Marie Kondoed my entire flat, because it's a small space and frankly clutter is stressful. Rule number 1 of fun: remove things that are stressful. You know, I went through every single area of my house and just decluttered as much as I could, and then every year, and not in January on purpose, I do it sort of whenever I have a bit of space and a bit of inclination, I just go through things again. I'm like, do I still love this? Does it bring me joy, as Marie Kondo would say? And if it doesn't, it goes in the charity bag. So yes, so I did this. However, 1, I still have too many books, and 2, I did get rid of some that I hadn't read, but there were a load that I hadn't read that I still wanted to read because I think they're potentially going to be in the love category. So I basically have one whole bookshelf, which is it's 5 stories to the bookshelf, and all shelves are like 3 layers thick, and I've got books stacked on top, and oh yeah. It's not as stressful as it once was, but it's, you know, not the clean looking bookshelf I wanted. I can't see everything I've got. So what I did was, everything here, which I'm going to show you in a minute, everything here I love and will read again, and therefore I'm keeping. Everything on this side I haven't read, so is being read, and then I make a call as to whether I keep it or not. I'm still not sure that even if I read all of these, decided not to keep them, that I would have enough space to clear more space there. I may just have to come up with another, maybe get rid of some DVDs. I have a lot of streaming services, maybe I should get rid of some DVDs to make more room for books, but yeah, I am being strict with myself on this. So I'm going to show you what we've got, and then I'm going to take you through the TBR, the bookshelf TBR. There are definitely some that I think might be keepers, others not so much. And actually I have had a couple where I've like read a few chapters and then I'm just like, nah, done. So without further ado, let's get into it. So here we go, look at this. Books, 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 books. Travel books! Let's go for a deeper dive. Right, so on this top, oh my god, right. For anyone, you know, who was like born in the 2000s, this is what an audiobook used to look like. There's actual like tapes in here. I don't know if I can open this one-handed, hold on. Look, cassette tapes. Old school audiobook. I do actually have an MP3 version of that now, but you know, I like the classics. And there is Narnia itself. We've got some Philip Pullman, Hunger Games series there. Oh. It's actually a really good book series. And then we've got loads and loads of Trudy Canavan. I love her. So I think that whole back row is Trudy Canavan. Then coming down, got bits and bobs. Patrick Rothfuss. This is an amazing trilogy, which he wrote these first 2 some time ago, and we're waiting for the 3rd. very patiently waiting for the third, but this is epic, 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 epic. If you haven't read this, you must. But you just have to be patient for the third part. All the Rivers of London series. We've got then, I think these layers again, probably Cassandra Clare. What's that? Some Michelle Moran. So some Egyptian bits and bobs. Harry Potter. my wand collection. So the full-on Sirius Black wand, and you can't actually buy a Lucius Malfoy wand. So I have a Lucius Malfoy wand pen. And then what have we got coming down? Oh, Robin Hobb. Lots and lots and lots of Robin Hobb because she's epic. More Trudy Canavan there. Oh, Throne of Glass series. That is epic as well. Oh, more Robin Hobb. Oh, all my original Harry Potters. I think I've got a Twilight series back there. Oh, the Divergent series of books. Really good books. Oh, now this is an interesting one. We're going to see on the TBR. Another book by this author, Night Circus. This is one of the very few books that I have kept that is a novel, and there's only one of them. I really like big book collections. I like getting to know characters and families and different worlds. So I am very fond of trilogies and, you know, things that go on beyond a trilogy. The Passage. I've actually got the second two in the TBR, we'll talk about in a minute. Lord of the Rings. I have more than one copy of Lord of the Rings. And this is all just like self-development books and books on fashion and sewing and all kinds of awesome things. So that's what we're keeping. Now let's look at the TBR. I thought this was going to be quite a quick TBR. Now I've piled them all up to show you. It's actually quite scary how many books I've got to go. As it is, one of those books is a complete compendium of all of the Jane Austen novels. So I've done Sense and Sense and Pride and Prejudice, and I've just started Mansfield Park. Not gonna lie, as much as I love like the Ang Lee film version of Sense and Sense, I had quite high expectations of the book, so actually it was a little bit of a letdown from that perspective. It drags. Like, it's a lovely story overall, but it's slow going. It does kind of pick up a bit towards the end, but yeah, that was a bit like, took a while to get through. Pride and Prejudice, a lot quicker. I think because one of my favourite things in the world, like especially if I'm ill or something, is to rewatch the BBC adaptation of Pride and Prejudice from the 90s with Colin Firth in it. It is amazing. I love it a lot, and actually they did stick very closely to the book, even to the point of just lifting the dialogue directly out of the book or maybe changing one or two words. So that was really just kind of like reading the story that I'm so familiar with watching. There wasn't a lot of difference, although I really enjoyed the ending of the book. I kind of feel like actually we missed out a little bit on the book ending within that adaptation, so that was very interesting. But Mansfield Park I know very little about, and actually I'm enjoying it so far. I think I'm about 6 chapters in, but no, good fun so far, so we'll see how that one goes. And then we've got a few more to go. I'm pondering maybe sort of pausing in between before I crack on with the next novels to tackle some of these other ones in the pile, maybe some quicker ones, just so that we can continue getting through things. So there's a big pile to go through, so without further ado, here we go. So first up we have some Tolkien. Always a good place to start in my mind. So actually both of these, and there is a third which I don't yet possess, for the simple reason of I bought these two and haven't read them yet. But they're both illustrated by Alan Lee, which is lovely, and actually this one's got a massive signed by Alan Lee sticker on it. They're actually both signed by Alan Lee, but this one I bought pre-signed. This one I actually went to a signing in London and met Alan Lee, which was lovely, and he did a whole presentation and he was just talking about all the work that he's done on Tolkien projects over the years, which was just beautiful to hear, to be honest. And the really interesting thing was we didn't get very long to chat because, as you can imagine, there was a long line and they were like chipping people along, but he was asking people where they were coming from, and you know, some people had travelled from a different country, from other sides of the world. I was a bit embarrassed because I was like, I've just come from the other side of London. But it turns out, actually, Alan Lee only lives up the road from me. As he pointed out, he's like, oh, I came from there as well. Bless him, that was really sweet. But anyway, so both of these are then part of this collection of works where Christopher Tolkien had been pulling together bits and pieces of older stories that Tolkien had put together. So you actually have seen different parts or versions of these stories within other of Tolkien's published works, but these have then been collected specifically and edited by Christopher to make standalone books, and they're sort of three of the key tales that really just kind of weave throughout the whole universe. So I am very excited to read them. I know it seems odd that I haven't read them yet. It's simply just a case of, I think, in having so many books that I hadn't read, and prior to sorting the bookcases, I just didn't even know what I had. So yeah, they're pretty high up on the list, to be honest. But equally, I don't think they're going to be quick reads. I think they're going to need a bit of time and dedication. And also, I have been putting off reading the ones where they are part of a series and I don't have all the books in the series, because then that means I have to buy another book before I've reviewed all the books. Like, this is the thing, it's like, I've got too many books to read, I'm not allowed to buy new books until I finish dealing with all of these. So yeah, I think they are probably going to be put off for a little bit longer, but I'm still very excited about those. So next up we got this one, Girl, Woman, Other. So I don't know huge amounts about it, to be fair, but I do know that it tells us the tale of 12 different women living in London at different times, from different backgrounds. It did actually, it reminds me on the front, win the Booker Prize in 2019, and I remember at the time people were raving a lot about it. I'm sure it's going to be really thought-provoking, really interesting, so I am excited to get to that one at some point. Then we've got Daughter of Smoke and Bone. So this is another one I don't know much about the story of, but I have heard a lot about. It's very much in my genre. I think it's going to be a fairly quick read, so I'm hoping actually this is one of those ones I can pop in between the Austen novels to give myself a break. Let's see what it says on the back. There was once a young artist called Carew who drew tales of monsters and demons that delighted and enthralled those around her. But she has a secret that ties her to a dusty subterranean chamber where her beloved guardian brokers dark deals in a place that is not here. A place that is elsewhere. Living with one foot in each world, Carew has never really known which one is her true home. Now the doors to everywhere are closing. I guess the only downside of this one is it's part of a trilogy. So if I enjoy it, I'm going to want to have the other two parts. Oh god, I think I'm going to have to make a pile of the ones that I probably can't read yet until I've gotten rid of or have reviewed some more of the other books. So yeah, maybe I should do that on the way back into the bookshelf plan. So Water for Elephants, you may know if you've seen the film with Reese Witherspoon and what's his face, Robert Pattinson. Sure, some people will kill me for that. Couldn't think of his name, could totally see his face. So I am intrigued to read the book. I've never yet found a film that has surpassed my enjoyment of a book. There are lots of films I appreciate for bringing books I love to life, like the Lord of the Rings films. I think they did an amazing job with those. Even though they changed the ending, and even though they left out Tom Bombadil, I'm not bitter about it. But otherwise, that's probably the one that gets closest enough to my level of enjoyment with the book. But yeah, so this one I am looking forward to reading, and actually that is a standalone book, so maybe that can go in the standalone books pile. This is good. Okay, we found something I can read in between Austen. Here's another one that you probably won't be surprised by since you're starting to see a theme. We actually, because there are so many books on that shelf, you didn't see that I have all of the main Game of Thrones books. This is the other series, the prequel series, he's writing whilst he can't be asked to finish writing the main series. I didn't really enjoy the changes they made to the storylines in the series of Game of Thrones. I enjoyed much about it, but yeah, there were a lot of changes they made that I didn't like. And to that end, I feel like they could have potentially gone off in a different direction, so I am really excited to read how the book series ends, if you just get on and do it. Please hurry up, thanks. But yes, in the meantime, I think that's why I haven't read this one. I was slightly embittered about both the series and his lack of finishing the book series. But yeah, so this is a prequel about the Targaryens. So again, I think he's written more of these since I purchased this one, so that's why it hasn't been read, aside from my bitterness, is that there are more of those to come. So that's going to go on the series pile for now. Then we've got this one, which is the Bone season, which I also think is part of a series. So here's the thing, I already told you that I like series, so that's probably why I have so many that connect into other things, but it is causing me a problem right now in terms of my space. The year is 2059. 19-year-old Paige Mahoney is working in the criminal underworld of Scion, London, based at Seven Dials, employed by a man named Jackson Hall. Her job, to scout for information by breaking into people's minds. I mean, we're like 3 lines down. How exciting is that already? For Paige is a dreamwalker, a clairvoyant, and in her world, the world of Scion, she commits treason simply by breathing. It is raining the day her life changes forever. Attacked, drugged, and kidnapped, Paige is transported to Oxford, a city kept secret for 200 years and controlled by a powerful otherworldly race called the Wraithim. Wraithim? Wraithim. I'm going with Wraithim. Paige is assigned to Warden, a Wraithite with mysterious motives. He is her master, her trainer, her natural enemy. But if Paige wants to regain her freedom, she must allow herself to be nurtured in this prison where she is meant to die. Dun dun dun! What I think also quite awesome about this, obviously it's got that fantasy setting, so it's not like true real world, but much like with things like Philip Pullman actually, it's set in places that I know or have lived or do live. So the fact that this is like London and Oxford, I have lived in both those places. So it just kind of, it makes it, even though it's fantasy, it makes it feel a bit more relatable to me in certain ways. So I'm excited about reading this. But again, series pile. Another one for the series pile, Eragon. Well, actually Eragon and Eldest. It has got the film outer cover, which is a shame because the film was terrible. I mean, just looking at this, we've got like Jeremy Irons, we've got John Malkovich, Robert Carlyle, like several other really good actors, and I wanted to love it so much. It was just bad. Having not read these books yet, I don't know whether that's a true reflection or whether unfortunately it just wasn't a great adaptation. But again, these are part of a much bigger series. I've got the first 2. I'm excited to read them, but they're gonna have to go on the series pile. I don't know how we're gonna do this with the series pile. Ooh, so this is the one I was telling you about. So this is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. So she wrote The Night Circus, which I showed you, that's on the shelf. I think The Night Circus was her debut novel actually, and it was bought for me by a friend who actually then recommended I read this one as well. I wasn't sure what I was going to make of it. It was interesting to me on 2 levels. One, it was a bit mysterious and a bit otherworldly. And 2, at the time, I'd sort of just started doing all of my circus skills. So I was like, oh, this is interesting on 2 levels. And it was just so transporting, mesmerising, engaging. It was one of those I just read so quickly. I don't think I read it all in one day. I loved it so much. So that's why that's one of the very few single keeper books I've got. As I say, the friend who bought it for me messaged me the other day and just kind of said, you need to read The Starless Sea. And I was like, but I'm not allowed to buy new books. But you know what, I was a bit like, #lockdown. So this may be the next one that I read then in between the Austins. So let's just read the synopsis for you. Are you lost or are you exploring? When Zachary Rawlins stumbles across a mysterious library book containing details from his own life among its pages, it leads him on a quest unlike any other. I'm already so excited! Following the clues inside, he is guided to a masquerade party, a dangerous secret club, and finally to a labyrinth filled with stories hidden far beneath the surface of the earth. But when the labyrinth is threatened, Zachary must race through its twisting tunnels and crowded ballrooms, searching for the end of his story. Okay, yeah, I need to bosh on with Mansfield Park this week so I can get to this. I'm sure Mansfield Park will also be enjoyable, but I haven't, because of this whole thing, I haven't actually read a fantasy book that I haven't previously read in quite some time, so this is exciting. Okay, moving away from novels for a second then, there's this one. So this is a book on numerology, which you might be like, that's random. It is random. I actually went to a retreat 2 years ago now. Anyone else feel like just you have lost all time since going into lockdown? It's crazy. Yeah, so I think it was 2 years ago now, and there was a numerologist there, and she was really interesting. Like, it's not something I'd ever really investigated before, and just the way she positioned it, it was very sort of day-to-day and relatable. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'd like to read a bit more about that. And someone had recommended this book to me, but I don't know. But I'm going to read it anyway because I think it will be an interesting study. Oh, so this one is really lovely. I have actually sort of started looking at this a few times in the past. It's called A Woman Who Lived Here. And it's basically a collection of stories about famous women who've had an impact on London, or who grew up in London or had some connection to London. And if you've been around London and you've seen those blue plaques that are around, they usually commemorate someone's birthplace or someone's place of work or where something was discovered. So this lovely author, Alison Vale, put together a collection of some really awesome stories about women who she felt deserved a blue plaque. So it talks about not just the stories, but the sites in London where they took place or where they're connected to. So this is definitely one I'm keen to dive back into. I love hearing stories about London, and I also love hearing stories about women through history who made a mark. You may not be able to see their marks so easily these days because these stories aren't always told, or they're overshadowed by male stories. So yeah, I'm really interested to read that. So, more not novels. Egypt. I've actually had numerous books on ancient Egypt over the years. I couldn't really tell you why, but I have been fascinated with Egypt since I was a child. Actually, there are definite things that have added to that, like when I first saw the Stargate film, which I appreciate. It's not exactly based on history. But I don't know, I think it's something about the fact that it's such an ancient civilization that existed thousands of years ago, and yet we can still see elements of their existence, which is just, it blows my mind. And actually the first thing I did when I finished my degree was go to Egypt. That was my graduation present to myself. I went to Egypt and visited the pyramids and the tombs, and just really kind of got to see those things I've been dreaming about for so long. But equally, it wasn't really something that we studied very much at school. I think, we touched on it in primary school, but that was about it. So whenever I see a really interesting looking book about Egypt, I buy it. I have held on to these two in particular because I think this one in particular, so there was a BBC series a few years back that really just kind of delved into the different ages of ancient Egypt, and focused quite a lot on some of the places I'd been. So this was like the accompanying book, so that was a definite keeper for me. I'm really keen to read more into that. And then this one just kind of looks into the myths and sort of connects the myths to the modern. So it looks at all the key different areas of ancient Egypt that are still visible today, or have elements of visibility today. So yeah, that's probably a good project for winter, actually, to really kind of delve into the Egypt stuff. So, and there's only 2 of those, so that's okay. So this is a pile of 4 because they are basically, just checking, yes, they are basically all biographies about significant people from the Tudor period. And I think they're all written by different people. So yeah, we've got 2 by Alison Weir, 1 by Sarah Gristwood, and 1 by John Cooper. Really just kind of delving into these key figures, and I think particularly with the Alison Weir and the Sarah Gristwood, it's looking at angles that aren't commonly studied, or that they have newly delved into because they're both historians, or really bringing to light characters who have been ignored by the male historical writers of the time. And so they've just kind of delved into what information might still be available to really just kind of pull together more of a detailed story about these people who we might not even have known existed at the time. So this one, the Sarah Gristwood one, is called Blood Sisters: The Hidden Lives of the Women Behind the Wars of the Roses. So this one covers Cecily Neville, Marguerite of Anjou, Margaret Beaufort, Anne Neville, Elizabeth of York, and Margaret of Burgundy. So should be really interesting. So this one is called The Queen's Agent, and it's about Frances Walsingham, who was effectively the chief spy of Elizabeth I and really just kind of protected her throughout her reign. So that's another sort of intriguing one that would be really great to dig into. Then we've got, this is a beast. Actually, do you know what? I was saying that none of these were part of a series, but that's a total lie, because this one was the first of a series. So Alison Weir did a particular study into the 6 wives of Henry VIII, and this was the first one where she dug into Catherine of Aragon. I think this does cover actually a section of her childhood before she even came over to be betrothed to Henry's older brother, because actually just the story of her family is fascinating, like her parents bringing together 2 nations to form a new nation. They were very much joint rulers. So she was brought up with a really strong female character in her mother, which I think you can see coming through when you understand how much she stood her ground to try and avoid that divorce, to try and avoid losing her husband, to really just stick to her guns. You know, she was feisty and she came from a feisty bloodline, so I think this is going to be really fascinating. This is another fascinating one. So this is Mary Boleyn, the Great and Infamous Whore, which in terms of a subtitle is not meant to be disparaging. It's more that, to be honest, is how Mary Boleyn was labelled by the male chroniclers of the time. There's actually not that much that was known about her, and that was really how she was referred to, if she was referred to at all. So one of the things that Alison Weir did with this book was that she dove very much into background that perhaps hadn't been seen before. She was pulling from different sources to really kind of piece together who this girl was, and why she's been painted so incorrectly by history, because of course she was then overshadowed by her sister, and her sister had an infamous end, which doesn't then reflect greatly back on the family. So poor Mary Boleyn is probably quite unjustly treated by history. So I am, based on the talk that Alison did when she launched this, I am really interested to kind of delve into what she was able to find about the truth of Mary Boleyn. We're still not done. So this one's going to be quick and easy. This is Joanna Lumley's autobiography. Looking at it, it's very much kind of coffee table style, but I was quite intrigued to just kind of learn a bit more about Joanna Lumley, because I grew up knowing her as a comedian, and then she started presenting serious things, and that was very confusing to me when I was younger. I was like, but yes. So yeah, I don't know much about her background, and I was interested to learn more, so that's why we've got that one. Probably going to be a quick read based on the mostly pictures nature of that one. So this is the duo, and I guess kind of akin to where we were heading with the Blue Plaques book. So this is Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls 1 and 2. They are more designed for kids, but I just liked that someone had really taken the time to pull together awesome stories about awesome women and to put them in that position of teaching your child at a young age that there are many, many awesome women out there who have done awesome things in the world, and making sure they know about it and bringing them up in that way to know that women are powerful. So, I mean, I couldn't even give you a list of how many different women are in these books, but they're just really pretty as well. Like, can you see this? All of them have this really lovely illustration going throughout. These are probably going to be quite quick reads actually, based on the fact that it's mostly just a sort of a single page summary and then an illustration. So these could probably go on the read sooner rather than later part of this pile. So back to novels. This is Torchwood. This is actually Torchwood Exodus Code. You may or may not have heard of Torchwood. I guess whether you have or not depends on whether you were a Doctor Who fan. Interestingly, I can take or leave Doctor Who, but I really enjoyed Torchwood and that particular premise. I think the thing with Doctor Who is that even though there is that sort of ongoing arc, the characters are changing all the time, and I think I find it quite hard to get attached to one version of the Doctor and then it changes, you know? Whereas Torchwood, it was sort of quite a tight-knit team. Only, I think, 5 or so key characters, and then 1 or 2 who would be recurring. But it also featured John Barrowman, who I think is awesome. And it's actually he and his sister who wrote this book. I haven't read any reviews, so I don't know if it's any good or not. But I actually, again, got to go to a signing of this one. So both he and his sister were signing, and I just have to show you this page because it's hilarious. And this is the signed page. They just scribbled all over the page. That's what you get for going to signing. Massive pen. Oh! It says happy birthday. I must have gone on my birthday. How hilarious. That's exactly the sort of thing I would do. What do you want to do for your birthday? I'm going to a book signing. That's me. So yeah, like, it should be really exciting. I've actually got all of the Torchwood series on DVD. I haven't watched them in ages. Maybe I should have a sesh, watch through all the series and then read the book. That'd be pretty cool. Okay, so another mini collection here. Oh, I don't know which order. I think actually this is, it should be this one, and then this one, and then this one. So these are the Jasper Fforde novels about a character called Thursday Next. I actually have the first 4 or 5 of these, which I have read. So again, they're buried somewhere in that bookshelf. Which is why I think they're probably on the bottom at the back, which is why we didn't get to them. So the awesome thing about this collection of books is that there is a main character, Thursday Next, and there is this kind of it's really hard to describe. Like, it's a crazy world of fiction. So the world of fiction literally intrudes on Thursday Next's normal life. So she's a police officer, and there's so much of it that it's just like, oh, this is just normal life, they're just getting on with things, and then suddenly the next thing you know, a famous character from a book has been arrested for suddenly appearing somewhere in the middle of the Oxfordshire countryside. So it's interesting in that you need to have read quite a lot of other books to understand some of the jokes and some of the patterns and some of what's going on. I just try to think of all the other characters who you see. You definitely see some characters, I think, from Jane Eyre, from Jane Austen, and it's just a really interesting series. But I think, to be honest, probably the other reason I haven't gotten to these yet is that they are very light reading, and they are quite samey, for want of a better word. So it's basically, here's normal life, here's some hijinks. But it is really interesting, and I think, you know, they are really designed for sort of a younger age bracket anyway, but I really enjoy them. So actually this is probably another good one to intersperse with the Jane Austen novels. I think that there are even more books in this series now, but I have to say I think I was kind of getting towards the end of it anyway when I bought these ones. So let me see how I go with those and decide whether I'm going to keep them all or not. Okay, we're in the home stretch now. And interestingly, I have 2 copies effectively of Alice in Wonderland, but this one is Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, and obviously is quite flouncy and folio looking, and this one is the complete illustrated works of Lewis Carroll. So I'm sure over the years, oh my god, look, Class 5 1993. You know when you used to write in the front of your books? So I'm sure at one point or another I have started reading both of these. I can't really remember ever having finished them. I don't know how I feel about the whole talking in riddles thing, to be honest, so I don't know what I'll do. I think perhaps I'll start with the shorter one and see how I go with that, and then see if I want to continue with the additional works in the bigger one. I know they're beloved by many, and I like the overall premise of the stories, but yeah, it's talking in riddles, I'm not sure. It does feel kind of like an acid trip. Not that I've ever had one of those, but you know? So this one is exciting and is another one which is more recent to the collection, and I think I had on a Christmas list or two. So this is Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology. So I don't actually know that much about Norse mythology, and what I do know mostly comes from Marvel comics and movies, which, let's face it, are not exactly strict to the myths. I have heard really good things about Neil Gaiman's retelling of these myths, so actually that's probably another one that can go on the quick and easy pile, and hopefully I am going to enjoy it, so let's see. And then finally, the good news about these 2 final ones is that they are parts 2 and 3 of a trilogy. So that is The City of Mirrors and The 12. I think actually they should have gone in the other order. So you may have caught it when we were looking at the bookshelf, but I have a copy of The Passage, which is the first part of this trilogy. And interestingly, I got that in the, I'm going to sound really old now, but in the early days of Twitter, when tweet-ups were picked up on by brands who were sort of just exploring what social was, and being that I worked in London at that point and that I loved books, I followed publishers. And the publisher of The Passage held this tweet up to, if it was kind of like it wasn't like a full-on book launch because it wasn't that big an event. It was, I guess, getting like customer interest in the book, so almost like sort of a fan reach out. So they had a number of copies of they call it manuscript proof, uncorrected, bound. So the interesting thing about this is I loved the premise of The Passage, but I really struggled through it, and I think, to be honest, it was probably because it's the uncorrected manuscript proof. It perhaps doesn't read as well as it might if you read the final edited version. So I did buy the other 2 parts of the trilogy, but I've kind of put off going to them because I found The Passage such a struggle originally. But actually a friend of mine has read the whole trilogy and she raved about it, and I trust her, so I think there were a lot of things I found frustrating in The Passage, which may have been resolved by the time they got to the final edited copy. So the question is though, because it's now been quite some time since I read this weighty beast, that's the thing, I don't know if is the final edited version that big, or is it smaller? Like, what happened? So do I try and read that again and see if I find it any smoother? Because also I can only remember bits and bobs about what happened. I can't remember who the characters are and stuff like that. So I think I'm going to need to get back up to speed before I do the other 2. But do I try and wade my way through that again, or do I just kind of look up the plot line online? I haven't decided yet, but I feel like I'm gonna need time to get through all of this either way. It's very stressful and very dramatic is what I remember about it, so yeah, it's gonna need some time, so I think perhaps this is gonna be on the latter end of the novel collection. So that's it. That is my current bookshelf TBR. As you can see, there's a lot there. It's pretty intense. I am battling my way through. I'd say I'm getting through the Jane Austen novels fairly quickly, but I think it'd be good to intersperse that with some of the quicker ones. I think the thing will be, there's a lot on these piles that I think are going to be keepers, so it doesn't really solve my space issue. But I do think it's important to get through as many of them as possible before I consider buying any new books. I've got to crack on. I simply have to crack on. So I think I'm gonna check in and keep you posted, let you know what I do and don't like. If anyone has read any of these and has any thoughts, I would love to hear them. If you do have any book recommendations, I would also love to hear those, although I can't buy them right now. Thank you for dropping in today to check out my TBR, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye!